Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons and others from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Trust me on this one. And make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, we're doing a long show tonight, so if you want to leave some comments live on Facebook or YouTube land, love seeing you there. The chats are always fun. And remember, your chats might show up on the show. And if you can't catch us live, catch the replay or on your favorite podcasting app. So you know me, my name is John Ruark, and we have a lot of people to introduce tonight. So I'm just here to talk about servant leadership, Masonic leadership, and all of the other fun things that go with the difference between leadership and management. Next up, Jason Richards. Good evening and hello.
Good evening, John. Jason Richards here, Past Master Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia. And I am here to talk about empathy and empathic leadership tonight.
Ooh, is that like telepathic, where you have to predict what people are? Okay, yes.
Literally putting yourself in their shoes. If you've seen Super Mario Odyssey with Cappy, where it like forces their soul out of them, that's what we're talking about here.
That's dark. Let's see. Special guest for tonight. We have Darren, Brother Darren. Good seeing you. And so you have to unmute yourself there.
I'm already screwing the show up.
Well, it was a nice show we had.
We'll fix it in post. No, we won't.
Thanks, guys. First of all, congratulations on 10 years. Woo. And just a major accomplishment. So honored to be on tonight and just blown away by the special, already blown away. So just feel really good to be here. Thanks for having me, and hope to give my expertise, knowledge on leadership and leadership training. So
yeah, awesome. You've been around the block or two, so that's good.
I have been.
10 years is a long time, and we've had quite a few winners and losers that have hosted the Masonic Roundtable, and just in you get to pick which one our next is, and that would be the one, the only worshipful Nick Johnson.
He's back.
Are my fans still here? Do I have to? I love all of you. Yes, thank you. Yes, this is indeed Nick Johnson. I still live. I'm still a has-been, and I'm very happy to grace this wonderful program that's lasted 10 years. So proud of you guys. This is just, I'll save those comments till the end, but what a fantastic podcast you guys do. So I'm back, and I guess I should go with the usual, right? millennialfreemason.com. I'm a master of Corinthian Lodge in big time Farmington, and I don't know. I guess the main thought after looking through everything and of leadership and stuff is guarding the East Gate. So that's kind of my thoughts on what we need to start doing. So really happy to be here.
Apparently Jason's happy you're here too.
That's great. I love it. It's gonna be such a good show.
Awesome. And last for now, we're having a couple of people come on later, but last for now is our favorite Martinez in Manassas, Virginia, and that is Maribel Martinez. Good seeing you on the show. Welcome, and what do you hope to contribute to tonight's conversation?
Sure, I'm the favorite.
Yes.
I didn't stutter.
We are 100% sure you are the favorite Martinez.
Well, I mean, I don't really know too much about Masonic leadership other than from what other Masons I know have told me. But I do hope to just reintroduce sort of like the most important things about leadership. And from my experience as a past worthy advisor at Rainbow Girls, and just my experience there and how it's kind of been, like mixed. But I've just learned from what I've done. And I just think that there could be things that could be improved upon, and maybe it could be applied to masonry.
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. We need your help to make this place better.
Fix it. No pressure. All right. So before we get into the details, yes, we are celebrating 10 years of a podcast. That's insane. It really is. And so with that, we're going to give a special shout out to the patrons who support the show. You guys are awesome and rock my socks. So if you want 10 more years of this, go to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable. If you don't want 10 more years of this, donate to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable.
Or send us a super chat.
Yeah. Right. Awesome. Yes, you guys are amazing. Thank you for everything you do. Next up, what do we have, Jason? What's the usual clip that we play?
Tarot card of the week.
Dang, man, this show is hot.
Oh, good times.
That was our least favorite Martinez singing
Yes.
tarot card of the week. Yeah.
Can't win them all.
No.
Let's see what we got here. We are going to, focus on this bad boy. Let's get the technology working.
So for tonight's show, we normally do one card of a draw, but we figured that since it's big 10th anniversary show, we're going to do a 3-card spread. And what's the spread specifically going to be geared towards?
Let's do 3 cards for the past, the present, and the future of Masonic leadership.
Heck yes, get out of my head.
I love it. So I'm doing probably my first tarot deck, which is the 8-bit tarot, even though, as Maribel noted in the green room, it does look more like a 16-bit color palette. We have the Empress as the past, the 9 of Wands, appropriate for the present. It's looking a little rough, and oh, this is nice. The Ace of Coins for the future. Yeah. All right. So when you put them all together, you have the feminine, maternal aspect of the past, right? Nurturing, comfort, care. But the 9 of Wands. What's that, Jason?
Growth too.
Yes. Oh yeah. And all the other details with Venus and pomegranates and all the other symbolism in there, if you really want to nerd out. That's the past. That gets us to the present. The 9 of Wands. You can see he is not a happy character. He's holding steady.
He's battle weary, right?
Yes.
He's worn. He's been roughed up a bit, but he's still standing.
Still there. Not quite done the fight. Persistence, courage, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But it
So-
hasn't been an easy time.
It has not been easy, but he's still in it to win it, because that ends up with the future of Masonic leadership ending up with the Ace of Coins, or the Ace of Pentacles, right? We're talking about new beginnings, like kind of a reset button, especially on material things. So we're not talking spiritual things, so that's an interesting aspect, because we are going to talk a lot about how do we deal with people, how do we interact in a more grounding kind of way. And so that'd be good if we could just hit the reset button on that, do a better job of that.
Well, and too, John, like the idea of hitting a reset button around material things, like we're going to be talking a lot tonight about lodge business practices
Yeah.
and lodge solvency.
Dues.
Dues. The dues are too dang low.
Dues.
And so, to me, I think this spread overall makes a lot of sense. We're coming from, a past craft that was very nurturing, very,
Romanticized even. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
we're in a state right now where we've taken our lumps, and we're not quite sure what the future is going to hold. And we're kind of at, a bit of a crossroads as far as the organization is concerned, really. And then, looking at, to me, this gives me hope, because moving from that crossroads to a new beginning, that gives credence to the, the refining, not dying, mantra.
That's almost as bad as to be one, ask one.
I mean, yeah, everyone's a critic.
Can't win them all, but I like it. That's a good summary, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn this thing around. Tonight we're gonna do a nice long form because we have a lot to talk about. Jason, why don't you just kind of kick us off, because there's no place better to start than the beginning.
So, so tonight, we're going to go as long as we've got content to talk about, or as long as our spouses let us. And as we were going through, all of the stuff that we wanted to talk about tonight, I think doing the 3-card spread. Yes, I see you on the Leroy Jenkins here. Doing a 3-card spread, I think, was very appropriate, because we're going to start with kind of Freemasonry now, which is, looking at kind of the leadership of the organization and some of the business practices in the past and the present that have gotten us to that state of the 9 of Wands, before moving into, okay, Freemasonry's future. How are we, or are we not, connecting with the Gen Z and the future Gen Alphas of the organization? And it all brings us back around at the end to, hey, we say a lot of really nice things in our ritual. We pat ourselves on the back that we're, a society of learned men. Do we actually practice what we preach? How can we do that more consistently, and be better going off into the future? And so those are the 3 big buckets of things we're going to talk about tonight. And happy to move into, what I've called it is Freemasonry now, and it's getting worse.
Darren, that reminds me of the Wilmshurst quote. Do you have that at the ready? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I don't know which one you're talking about.
Oh, it's the one that RJ loves to talk about. Basically, we're not here to just teach men about symbolism of,
right,
of things. That there's actually something more to it. It was quoted in one of these. Well, let's talk about the Midnight Freemasons articles.
Oh,
that's really what inspired a lot of this, and you were the author of one of those.
Yeah.
So, what got you and RJ interested in stirring up these?
I'll try to make this as PC as possible and not identify any guilty parties, but there was a situation of a certain member posting questions on the Grand Lodge of Illinois' Facebook page regarding leadership and trying to survey the membership about leadership. And I think with the purpose, or with the intent of taking that feedback and potentially maybe trying to create a leadership program of their own to sell, I guess, to the Grand Lodge. So I think that kind of was the impetus. And just given other things that I'm sure RJ has informed you that are happening here in Illinois regarding Masonic education, I think that it kind of, RJ wrote the article that was the spark and got myself and others thinking, and then we just added to, and that's where we ended up.
Well, and so where RJ really started, I think, was this idea around, what are we teaching our members,
Mhm.
by and large, from a Grand Lodge perspective. And I think, RJ's focus was, okay, you know, it seems like the Grand Lodge is kind of going whole hog into like leadership training, and overwhelmingly so at the expense of, other educational opportunities that dig deeper into, some of the underlying, thematic arcs within the organization, if that's PC enough.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I will just say that to my knowledge, and maybe RJ has better purview than I do. Um, there's not an organized leadership training per se. They do have an officer development training, which I guess, it's semantics. But from my understanding, speaking with those who've taken the class, who've not taken the class, just full disclosure there, it is more just how to manage a lodge for members that are, not familiar with management or have never been in a management position. So
And
that's,
increasingly don't want one, right, Darren?
well, I think I think that's probably the case, that we have a lot of membership that does not aspire to be leadership or management, I should say, because it's leadership and managing are two different things. So I will say that you have increase of lodge membership that does not want to end up being one of the dais officers. They're fine kind of sitting as a deacon or somebody that doesn't have a lot of responsibilities when it comes to the management of the lodge and making the day-to-day or not day-to-day, but what one would refer to in business as day-to-day decisions. So I think what that does twofold is that it puts an onus on those that have been in those positions to keep cycling through them, which contributes to burnout. And then also, you know, uh, personally, what I've been thinking about from, if Grand Lodges are wanting to have lodges ran as businesses, then, should we be implementing lean processes and other things into into our philosophy and into our leadership? So
Yeah. Well, you got me excited there. So let me double down on that.
So before you jump into that, Nick came off mute.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
so yeah, I know. I'm gonna break the flow here, but
Do it.
it's kind of interesting is that I was thinking about it. There's actually an old adage with organizations that an organization that is growing has no time for rules, right? And an organization that's dying, that's all it has time for, right? And so I've looked at the old minutes, the old who was in charge of my lodge, of everything like that, even the Grand Lodge of Minnesota. It was the same person year after year after year for many years. And it was because I think the lift is so much lower, right? I mean, if you're a leader in one of these, lodges back in, I don't know, 1875 or whatever it is, you don't have to actually worry about, oh, am I turning in my annual report? Am I putting it into Grandview? Am I doing this and that? And sometimes I wonder if that's kind of the issue is that we've we've expected our leaders to come in, right? And and try and figure out this mountainous paperwork that they're already doing elsewhere, right? And instead of just like practicing masonry, it's like you better have your ritual perfect. You better have this form filled out. Have you done your petition stuff with the secretary? Have you signed things? Have you paid the building? I mean, that's the thing is when we were starting out, we didn't have to worry about it that way. And I think in some respects, that was actually a better situation just because, we we didn't put leadership was not managing a small business, right? It was literally
Yeah.
managing a lodge, and that was it.
Yeah. So and hello, it's me. I'm
Hello.
the. Yes, hi, everybody. Sorry, I'll be replacing my daughter momentarily. But no, I think Nick
Maribel can
touched.
stay on.
Well, okay. So I guess I will depart after this comment. But no, I think Nick touched on a lot of points that we need to get to. But I think going back to Darren's comments, we're using Masonry in general uses the word leadership to talk about leadership, which it really doesn't teach, and the degrees don't teach that, with administration and management. And they're three separate constructs that, from my perspective, have kind of been getting lumped into one, and we don't do any of them well. So that's kind
Huh.
of where we're kind of stuck in the world that Nick is talking about now, right? It's like over administration, a bureaucracy that cannot support itself, across the board, and management that doesn't know how to manage, and people being called to lead that don't understand what that entails. So, yeah, it's like a three-pronged something, which I can't say on air, that just hits you all at once.
I mean, if I could add something from my experience as being a Rainbow Girl, which is like an offshoot of Masonry, part of like a Masonic body, I've had the opposite problem of where we have had some new members, but the main issue is the fact that we don't really do the things that we need to do. We don't prioritize these events that need to be done to bolster money for the things that we need to get done, because it's a charity organization. That's its main purpose. And it's another purpose is to get young girls ready for the real world and to be better with leadership and like life skills. But the problem is that we now have these younger girls coming in and not really doing the stuff that they need to do. Of course, some of them do, but it's just more so the issue of the leadership being like not prioritizing those things that we need to do to get done and not doing the things that uphold what it means to be a Rainbow Girl. So instead we just do like these fun little events, which are cool once in a while.
Sure.
But if you have events that we need to have and you replace them with these events or even prioritize having these fun events, then it really just feels something more like a Girl Scouts more than something that can be linked to Masonry. Like, what are we doing, really? What are we doing? Are we selling Girl Scout cookies, or are we trying to make young girls become responsible women? Like, what are we doing?
What are if you don't mind, Maribel, what are some of those things that some of those events and things that you'd like to see actually happen?
Oh yeah, there's a lot I could say, but I don't think I could. But I'd say like the biggest thing I'd want to see is, especially like I'm seeing a lot of Gen Alpha people now, because I'm considered Gen Z, which is just the thing before it, just barely though. But I just like to see a lot more structure. I just like to see a lot more like just feeling like you're in a sisterhood and not feeling like you're in a group just to gossip and just to go do some things once in a while.
Love it.
And it just feels more like a just tea party more than just like a place where I feel like I'm part of a belonging. And that's an issue I've had for many years because of things that I've done or things that I haven't done, like some of these things are out of my control. And I just feel kind of isolated in a way that I can't really explain. But it's just, I just wish that we had more of that sisterhood connection, just as Masons have brotherhoods, and how they called themselves brothers. I don't feel like I can call myself a sister, and that's just kind of sad.
Yeah,
You're getting lots of head nods because I think all of us have had the same exact Masonic experience as well.
She sounds
Not
like
any better over here.
She sounds like a worn out past master. That's what she sounded like.
Well, I mean, that's not too far off. I was worthy advisor like 1-2 years ago.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I think especially in the youth groups. So I come from a long background of scouting, and so it's one of those that I think that was a lot of what leadership training looked like, right? I mean, scouting is what it's one very valuable thing that it does is that it's very good at making you understand what is in a task list and then getting it done right. I mean, it's like structure, and it's great. And I think that would be absolutely something that fits like in Rainbow Girls or Jobies or D Malay. I know D Malay is very good about keeping their structure built into it, right? And I think that's absolutely correct. I think that you need to have an understanding with leadership, with those who are managing whatever body it is, that there are certain tasks that they're going to have to do. But again, that's one of those that you have to like set those expectations early, right? Because if you don't, it's exactly what you're saying. It's just this idea of you just don't feel any kind of court esprit, any kind of like belonging. And it's because, you're just kind of coming in and
You're just
and
there.
and you're just
Mhm.
there. And that's and if you're a leader, it's like, all right, well, I'm having to manage process and people, and it's like, how do I balance that? How do I learn how to balance that? And that's a lot of what we struggle with. I mean, even now. And I absolutely agree with the articles too that, I don't think that masonry in and of itself should be a leadership training device. It was interesting is back years ago, the York Rite constantly is pushing this, or at least they did for a while, this York Rite leadership training, and they would constantly encourage me to come out. You should come to this. I never did because, well, it was in Sioux
They still
Falls.
are.
Yeah, they
They
still
still
are.
are.
Yeah, yeah. And it's they would
Yeah.
constantly tell me to go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I love Sioux Falls. It's fine.
So,
It's
so
okay. But yeah.
just to
And
just to chime in on that, because Nick opened up a Pandora's box there when we're talking about leadership training in Masonic bodies, and I'm not gonna get specific, but I attended some leadership training. And you guys know me. I was in the Army for a few years, and then I spent a good 15 plus years in the
You
business
need to get
world.
your monies back, Joe.
Dude, let me tell you. So, but it was interesting. I was super jazzed when I heard about this leadership program that a certain large body of Masonry does. And then they started offering it online, I think right after COVID. So I was like, cool, yeah, I'll spend a Saturday and do some leadership training and stuff. And I got to tell you, and I paid money for it. I was uber disappointed because and John's head's going to explode when he hears this. They were covering books and concepts and leadership ideas that kind of started to go out of style in the 1980s. Like, this is not what businesses teach anymore, like for the past 30 years. And I'm like, why are we talking about this? The modern world doesn't talk about this. And that was an entire Saturday for me.
oh man, see, so what you're telling me is a very smart idea that I didn't visit the beautiful state of South Dakota. you know, and that's the thing is like you are absolutely right because it sounded like every time someone would describe that particular training to me for the York Rite side, it was constantly a well, we use, and then they would, I can't remember the titles of the books, but they were very old. I mean, they were the level of books that you find over in like a bargain bin of like a I don't know, a Goodwill, but like not a good Goodwill, but like that one that's kind of in the sketchy part of town, that Goodwill. So
That's the one.
yeah, that one. It's like, yeah, I don't necessarily have, you know, I understand what they're trying to do, right? But I think the other misconception that we have is sometimes we have this idea that we have too many we don't have enough leaders, right? And sometimes it's like, well, we have so many bodies, right? But the bodies require leaders, but there's so many of them, but there's so few people that are actually going to
Right.
serve.
But
So
Yeah.
they're based on an out of date paradigm that we'll never revisit.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Well, so again, I think this is a really good point for me to jump in because I've been champing at the bit for this because you guys have been dancing around the separation between management and leadership, right? And I like even the extra thing that Darren added in with administrative as well, right? Because there's a huge difference. Just because you are in a position of authority does not make you a leader. Let me say that again. Just because you are an officer of a lodge or higher, that does not immediately make you a leader. And so it is one of my pet peeves when someone says, "Oh, we have to listen to our leaders." Like, no. You don't you don't earn that title, right? That's like another little pet peeve, right? You have to earn the title worshipful. That is an honorable title, right? And so you shouldn't be calling yourself worshipful, and you shouldn't be just throwing that around, right? But
And you shouldn't be expecting to be called
yes,
worshipful.
exactly. So management is actually the responsibility, the person who has the authority to execute the tasks, to make sure that bills are being paid, right? That makes sure that the lodge is functioning and operating, right? You can manage that and still be a horrible leader, and vice versa. You can also be a great leader and not have any management role whatsoever. And that's one of my earliest leadership trainings was like, you can lead from right where you are, even if you are the youngest Mason in the lodge, right? If you're like, hey, I'm really good at this thing and I think I can help the lodge grow because of this, go for it. Like, lead from where you are. You do not need to have a collar around your neck or a different colored apron in order to be a leader. So
But
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 Jason,
sometimes it feels like, especially in a lot of our grand jurisdictions, that you have to have a
right.
collar around your neck for anyone else in
So
leadership to take you
as
seriously.
and so I think this is another thing I was alluded to in one of the Midnight Freemasons articles, which was implied about rank. And so if you think about the military, rank equals leadership, right? You must follow orders. You have to do it for safety, right? So people, or else people are going to die, right? So that is an absolute reason to follow because I said so, not because you want to. But we're in a volunteer organization where lives are not necessarily on the line. And so you can't just say, well, I'm the master. You have to do what I say. Maybe within the confines of the lodge, yes, by paper, but that doesn't make people want to follow you as a leader. Right?
Absolutely. And it's, so I should tell you kind of the newest educational tool that I've been using, right, has been going back to the Aesop's fables, right? And the thing that I've noticed is with like the leadership that we have, right, is well, I'll use the story first and then I'll kind of explain it in the moral. But it's called the ass in the lion's skin. So essentially, an ass is walking through a jungle, or through the mountains, sees the skin of a lion that had been killed, right, by a hunter. So he puts it on himself, and he's just laughing to himself, and he sneaks around, and every time he sees an animal, he scares it, right, because he's a lion now, right? Boo, boo, I'm scaring you, right? Well, all the animals are running because they all think he's the lion. And then, all of a sudden he finally gets to the fox and he scares the fox, and the fox is running away just like all the other animals, but the ass starts laughing, right? He's like, well, the fox immediately turned around and said, if you'd kept your mouth shut, you might have frightened me too, but you gave yourself away with that silly bray. And so the moral of it is you can put a guy in fancy collars and wonderful aprons, but an ass is still an ass. And I think that's the issue.
I love
Sometimes
that.
we have to and that's kind of where it's at, right? Is we don't we worry about the West Gate, and so I'm kind of been thinking about it this way, is that we protect the West Gate, but so many times once we're in a lodge, we don't protect the East Gate, right? We don't protect the East. And it's one of those that will promote people through that really don't have a reason to be put through, right? Because well, their attitudes are terrible, right? Their their way in which they function with others is terrible. They're really only there to be a pincushion, right? They're looking for the next past blank that they can put on their coat. And I think that's kind of the thing, is that we have to be very picky with our leaders. And especially, just like I was saying previously, my own lodge had the same worshipful master for like 20 years. People didn't care if they were going to be made master in that lodge, because really they were in the frontier. They didn't have time. They were farming, or, doing something else, working with the railroad. So,
Defending the Alamo, you know.
well, I mean, sort of in Minnesota. I don't know. It's kind of a weird state, but yeah, and it's just kind of funny that way. We really do kind of forget that a lodge needs to have a vetting process for the leadership, because I've been through, I mean, all of us have, right? We've watched groups that we've been in that elect people that look like me foolishly, and they put us in leadership because they're like, well, he's alive, so let's do it, right? And the person shows up. Well, I did show up to every meeting, so I will give myself that. But a lot of them will just disappear or not be there. And the expectation was at the beginning of the year, but nothing else, right? And that's really what we have to do, is just be picky. I mean, if we're going to be picky on one side of the lodge, we ought to be picky on the other side.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy of sadness, right? Because you've got, just like that post we just showed, you've got lodges that can barely open a door, right? So they have to pick from what they have. And you've got lodges, and I heard you guys talking about it while I was coming down here, was, we've got people, and we have a past Grant Master who just made that joke right here on the chat, that, at some point in time, you're going to run out of room on your signature block, right? For all the titles and lapel pins and tchotchkes and swords that you collect, right? Yeah, I said swords, man. But
Throwback.
It's not consistent across the board, right? You've got some lodges, and we've talked about this before, you've got some lodges that should probably, restructure or go away, or, just should not bother keeping the lights on anymore. And then you've got other lodges that are just, again, they're just revolving doors of people collecting lapel pins.
So I think, Joe, the greater part of your argument that you just started to get into is that one of my concerns, one of my great concerns, especially with our current leadership, is what I see as an unwillingness to address the future and look at data and statistics. And for example, in the example that you brought up, where you have lodges that can barely open the doors, here in Illinois, I'm a member of 2 lodges that are within 5 miles of each other, and they're rural lodges. And then there's another lodge, it's another 5 miles down, that I used to be a member of. But I know at some point these lodges just have to merge. So, I've been urging, why aren't we having the hard conversation right now and say to ourselves, look, it's not, we may be able to open now, and we may be able to confer a degree with some help, but guys are aging out. When our average age is in the mid 60s, our generation, my generation, you guys, well, in millennial and Gen Z, we need to start sounding the alarm bell and say, look, we need to start looking at the data and saying, okay, X, Y, and Z can consolidate. That'll be a good lodge. A, B, and C can consolidate. That'll be a good lodge. But we need to start looking at the picture and saying, and being honest with ourselves and saying, look, we are. I know people. There's the phrase people like to say, we're not reducing, we're refining, something along those lines, which I hope is true. But right now, we need to really look at the future and start holding our leadership accountable to start planning for inevitability.
So, I mean, you kind of answered your own question there, right? And I think we just ruined this long form show because here's the answer.
Yeah.
Well, good night, everybody.
Go have a beer.
Bye.
So, you answered your own question there, right? We're talking about good, bad, or indifferent. We're talking about a generation of leaders in Masonry across the board that came in, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, that came in during a time of plenty, right? So they came in during a time of membership is falling out the doors because there's so many people joining, and you had the big social experience, and the appendant bodies were losing their minds with people. You couldn't have enough, Royal Arch Masons and Shriners and Grotto members and all this stuff, right? That's the Mason.
I found these ancient degrees.
Yes, and I'm
They're
just going to.
they're in my handwriting.
Yeah, but they're just gonna. So you have these leaders that came in during this time of plenty, right? And now they're trying to manage an organization with those same goals in mind, right? When, to your point, and it sounds kitschy, but I'm a firm believer in the we're not dying, we're refining. But the people that are bothered by that comment are the people that want their Freemasonry the way that it looked 10 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, right? They're not going to be okay with what Freemasonry is going to look like in where we're 16 years, right? 2040 comes, when the inevitable comes, where, to your point, these decisions are already pretty much we're at the point where they're already taken out of their hands, right? Freemasonry is going to look way different than it did when I joined and John joined and Nick joined. It's going to look very, very different. And I think we have a group of people now, unfortunately, that change is not going to be a pleasant one,
No, absolutely. Well, and so I can tell you, because I have experience now being within 2 different fraternal organizations, right? So I'm now currently a 3rd degree odd fellow as well. And the interesting thing with
How are
them,
their membership numbers doing?
well, that's just it. I mean, it's tough because I've been saying this for a few years now, is that odd fellowship is essentially where Masonry will be 30 years from now. It's exactly the same, because the only difference that I think has been really done well in odd fellowship is the way in which their leadership is done. But other than that, there will be changes to this organization that will look almost identical to what odd fellowship is dealing with right now. And I mean, I might even just say it, odd fellowship invited women in 2003 or 4. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm not saying it will happen, so don't go after me, whoever. I'm sure some people.
Clandestine.
I wouldn't be surprised, right, if there's some small Grand Lodge somewhere that has now hit the magic number of like 900, right? And they'll sit there and say, "There's nothing left for us to do except for either sweep up the floor as we close the store,
Right.
or we actually do something different." And so that's just it. Is like, we're not planning for this future in any respect. I mean, it's like we have opportunities. I mean, thankfully in Minnesota, we have now a hired position that looks for like membership. There's a membership coordinator, and it's a position that's with the Grand Lodge. That's not it. I'm not sure if it's paid. Maybe it is, but it's a very dedicated role. It's a full-time position. But that being said, the local lodges, we're going to need to have something different done, and something different done soon, because unlike UGLE, that is fortunate to be in a smaller, compact area, so many of the lodges in the United States are, 2-hour drives from each other. Well, at some point, people won't do that anymore. And so, I mean, it'll be the classic case of leaders without anyone underneath them, right? Which is really just nothing.
Oh, so it's a membership problem. So if we just get more people in the door, do more one-day classes, just pump those numbers. Those are rookie numbers when we pump those up.
You got that right. No, just kidding.
Right, Darren? Darren, that's going to solve.
Yes, the
Kudos.
You know the title of my article is that we have a membership problem that's caused our leadership problem, which is absolutely true, because we have I'll say membership is also, for the most part, complicit in what's going on right now.
Yes.
Because we elect our leadership. We're a democracy, or semi-democracy, but we elect our leadership, and we have the ability
we're a
to.
democracy in as much as Russia was a democracy.
Well,
in the 90s.
yes, I mean, I'm just saying that we have the ability to run from the floor in most jurisdictions, or run alternate candidates to the current progressive line that exists in Grand Lodges. And I think we saw in Texas different reason for them doing so, but the power of membership united when they have their mindset on getting rid of leadership that is ineffective, or in their case, corrupt as well. So, but
and Oscar brings up a really good point. Glad you're on with us tonight, Oscar. The idea that the masses are okay with the status quo. Well, if you look
Nothing's
at
changing.
if you look at the median age for Masonic membership in the 60s, of course, because those are the members who, by and large, have tasted the grand years of Freemasonry and are still looking for that.
I mean, if you read Dwight, I was going to say, if you read Dwight Smith, I mean, in 1963, he's complaining about the same things we're complaining about right now. So nothing has changed in 60 years. Absolutely nothing has changed.
The window slid. That's it. Mm-hmm.
That's it. Because we have leadership, and have had leadership that just wants to kick the can. Let's kick the and
change is hard, man. Like change is different. I'd rather take the, what do they say, the devil I know than the devil I don't know. So we could just ride this thing out. Like, trust me, the numbers are not falling. We can just ride this thing out, and everything will be fine.
Mm-hmm. And
if we just guilt trip more people into joining our organization.
I haven't seen you in lodge lately, Jason. I got a chair you could fill if you got some spare time.
Yeah, you can learn leadership. That's what Masonry is. Teaching leadership. We've done it full circle, guys. This is it. I mean, we've done it. We solved the problem.
We're so hard right now.
But and it's absolutely true. I mean, and I wrote an article many years ago, and it was one of those articles that got me a lot of flack, because I essentially said we need to have an elitist mindset for Freemasonry, because for the most part, what are we offering, right? I mean, there is a certain level of, we need to meet on the level, right? But there's also a certain point in which, if you're somebody who is already probably management level or leader level, are you going to spend your time at a lodge if all they do is nothing? No, they're gonna get paid, man. They're gonna do it for something else. They're gonna do it because they're really into the large charitable organization that they're helping run as a volunteer. They're gonna help an immigration fund or something like that. But they're not going to do, like, just, hey, I'm so glad I can work in this community organization that literally just came in for 30 minutes and we're out, because the membership that we're picking here doesn't really do anything, right? I mean, what's the point then? I mean, you could have a bunch of leaders, but they don't do anything, right? I mean, I don't know. We need to offer something.
I think to your point, Nick, and somebody pointed out in the chat, leaders are great, but what are we leading towards? And I think that's also an issue with current leadership, is that there seems to be no strategic plan whatsoever.
I'm leading to the end of my year in the Grand East. That's the goal.
Yeah. What do what is our goal? What is our plan for the next 5-10 years?
More members.
More
yeah,
one-day classes.
okay.
More
So
one-day
we know that membership is going to continue trending downward. We have the data. The data's been there for many years. John, you do a wonderful presentation about this. So we have the data. So let's look ourselves in the mirror and let's start making decisions and choices regarding what the future is going to look like. Because I mean, let's face it, guys, we belong to organizations, as all the appendant bodies as well, that are massive bureaucracies that need to be streamlined. They need to be streamlined.
But if they're streamlined, Darren, then nobody will get the shiny gold thingy to hang on their coat, or.
And that's the heart of the issue, Joe. Right?
And I'm not being glib either, right? Like literally,
no.
I'm gonna I'm gonna get in this line for 9 years to get this thing so that I can go be a grumpy bastard, sitting on the sideline.
You're absolutely correct, and that's why we need leadership that are servant leaders, not leadership that are title chasers.
Yes,
absolutely. Well, you know what? I can tell you that one of the most enjoyable experiences I ever had in Masonry was going through the Royal Order of Scotland, and the reason is
got a
that
big sword.
well, that too. I mean, let me tell you, that sword was extremely heavy. It was actually causing soreness in both biceps, which is not very hard, but yeah. Anyway, it was the thing I love about the Royal Order of Scotland is you'll never get in that leadership line. And it's actually kind of great because then you're really just there to enjoy yourself, right? And sometimes I think because we overemphasize that, hey, we're going to throw you in the line, it's 7-year commitment, but then you get this nice apron that you get to walk around in, and people have to call you a nice name, right? But I don't get as much enjoyment out of having the past whatever as I did during that Royal Order of Scotland conferral, because I'm only there to experience the degree, to share in the fellowship, and go. It's
Yeah.
great. I mean, it's beautiful. But and I think sometimes that's what it is that we like, if you've ever been in the Royal Arch, right? It's what, 12 slots that you have to go through until you get to the chair, unless you're in a struggling one. Yeah,
So what you do like I did, you become a Royal Arch Mason, and then 3 months later become High Priest, and then you get to skip all that.
No big deal.
So, right? Because I said yes, right? So
So
it's that I'm there and I say yes mentality. But again, going all the way back to Darren's point, that does not a great leader make, right? Just because you're present and you have a pulse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think Monica's hitting this right on the head, because we do not want to do all this and grumble and just sound like we're complaining, because we actually have some ideas for this, right? We're not saying we're going to fix Freemasonry. We're not saying we have the answer either, but we can say when it comes to Masonic leadership, most, if not probably all of us in the room right now, have actually gone through, no kidding, actual personal leadership growth development, training, advocation, held those positions, right? So, it's not something that we're just waxing poetic about. We've been there, we've done that, and now, how would you change the structure in place? And I think, just to start things off, I mean, Darren and RJ in their Midnight Freemason articles actually, basically say that this leadership training is really something that is not wholly unique to Freemasonry, right, Darren?
Right. Leadership training. Freemasonry should not have a sole purpose of leadership training, and quite frankly, probably it should again teach management skills. I believe that.
Oh yeah, you need to run the lodge.
You need to run the lodge, right? Mm-hmm. But But back to your point, John, confusing management with leadership, I think, is what Grand Lodges tend to do. And from a leadership standpoint, RJ's point was spot on, that you can get leadership training from your business role or from other sources. Freemasonry shouldn't be in the business of leadership training. And if they want to have leadership training for their quote unquote leaders, managers, they should be getting firms from the outside that specialize in this.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Not try to roll their own. Because I mean, I've seen a few different jurisdictions try to have their own officer leadership training, and it's 99% usually just the operations of the lodge, which is absolutely necessary. That's not what this show is talking about.
And learn your ritual.
It's lacking. Yes, it's not just the ritual either, right? We're talking about actual leadership. How do you inspire? How do you grow people? How do you put yourself last? I mean, just many of the books on this bookshelf are about actual leadership principles, and I didn't get them at the Bad Wheel store right outside of Nick Johnson's hometown.
You know, we'll have to go there together, because let me tell you, there's some wild books there.
Oh, I can't wait to
love
see.
They're beautiful. Well, yeah, and you know, the thing is, I have to say, I think sometimes, and we did discuss this before with the callers and everything else, but sometimes we really do overemphasize the leadership and underemphasize those that are in leadership that are not considered leaders, right? So in my lodge, we actually have an award called Mason of the Year. This award goes to anyone. I mean, it could be a past master, a regular member. For the most part, it's gone to regular members of the lodge. And the whole point of it is a recognition of leadership that they did. So we've had it given out to people who have redone our website, people who have done planned full when we did like a polar plunge, things like that. And so, you know, it's an acknowledgement, but it's not an acknowledgement of leadership without having to necessarily attach it to this obsession with pins. And you know, I mean, that's a lot of what our problem is, right? It's the pin cushion mentality, that everybody's got to have this P in front of their name, because I guess that makes you more special and wonderful, when really we could recognize these guys now with all kinds of things. And really, when you're doing it that way, the person who's the mason who's doing that can then take on another role and another role, and then finally maybe they're ready to progress to junior warden, things like that.
Well,
but you know,
or
yeah.
maybe they're not and they never will be, and that's okay.
Right.
Lead where you are.
Exactly.
Right.
And I let me tell you, I have a member of my lodge that has been doing fantastic work forever. He has refused the line more than once because he doesn't have to. I mean, he's the only job he's ever taken, the only office he's ever held was Tyler for 1 year. And he didn't, and that's it. And I was like, so you literally want the job where you never come in? It's like, I don't care. It doesn't matter, because he really just wanted to do the rest of the work.
Sorry, I was eating a chicken nugget off camera. I haven't eaten today. But
what's going on? That sounds like a personal problem that you
What-
should.
so yeah, so
Why-
I was
Why
late
not on camera, Joe? Why
because
not
that's
on
rude.
camera?
That's rude, and then everybody will want chicken
It's
nuggets.
never stopped you before.
So next person who does a super chat, I will send you chicken nuggets. But yeah. So anyway,
Well,
I think
the
that-
Masonic Roundtable will not be liable for any foodborne illnesses contracted by eating said mailed chicken nuggets.
it's not real food, so you can't get a foodborne illness. So we're good. McDonald's, not a sponsor. So anyway, going back to Monica's point of like, stop whining and provide solutions. I mean, I think that Nick said something really interesting in that you do have those brothers that, you know, we like to say labor in the quarries, right? And don't do it for fee or reward. And they're stalwart and they're there and they're always there, right? And to Nick's point, unfortunately, the system is designed to not really give a shit what they think, right? You've got a bro
Right.
who's never been a past master. He has no acronyms or abbreviations at the end of his name. So in the system, his opinion means nothing, right? It's like, oh, okay, why don't you get in a seat and, you know, sit in the East one year and then we'll care what you have to say. And that's kind of a system that's perpetuated across the board, right? Like when you get to Grand Lodge and you go to vote on things and this kind of, oh, you're not a past master? Oh, okay, well, we don't care what you have to say. So the system has these kind of rules that you kind of have to live by. So those brothers that do labor in the quarries and do it for its sake alone, they're kind of ostracized, right? So, you know, where's the reward there?
I mean,
that wasn't rhetorical.
There isn't one, really. I mean, but guys that you're describing, Joe, they do it because I think, you know, they love Freemasonry and they are contributing and they're the way that they know how to contribute, and they have no aspirations for anything else. And I think that's, you know, I wish I could get back to that. Honestly,
No, it's funny. And again, going back to solutions, I mean, all I could think about, and if especially the guys that live near me, you tell me if you thought different. I mean, I was super excited to be, and I'm a Mason 19 years now, to become Master My Lodge. I was looking forward to it. I had it planned out for a long time. I had a goal, I had a mission, and we achieved it and then some, right? And then I got stuck there for another year. So, and then all my magic happiness disappeared. But no, I think we had a goal and it was an achievable goal. And that goal was to just do the best kind of masonry we could do. We didn't give a crap about this quota or this thing from the Grand Lodge or, hey, I need more members. It's like, no, we're just going to come every month and do masonry, right? We're going to do the best degrees we ever did. We're going to have programs that just knock people's socks off and give people a reason to come. I didn't care if we met all the little Grand Lodge check boxes, and neither did anybody else in the room. You know, everybody was just, and you guys were there. You know, we just had fun doing masonry.
Well, and I'll add to that too. So there's a big thing that everyone's encouraged to do in the Grand Lodge of Virginia, which is to get this Hillman Award, and it has a checklist of good actions to take that any lodge that takes a little bit of effort could probably get, right? And this is like go traveling, have fraternal visits across other things, present programs, be involved in youth group, basic stuff, right? My year was, we were like, it's our third year in existence, and we were still trying to get our feet wet, like literally finding where we were going to meet. I did not put an emphasis in applying for the Hillman, and I had pressure from past masters of other lodges, and they're like, hey, we got to get this. I said, why? Like, can we focus on ourselves? And if we get all those things, then that will be great. And here's an example. Like, we are an academic lodge, right? So therefore, youth groups are literally our brothers that are joining, right? These are young guys that are joining in college. We don't need to have a youth group tied to us or have a big youth group event, because the youth groups are barely younger than our members that are joining, right? So it made no sense to check that box in the name, the virtue signal of leadership or getting an award. That was not an incentive to us. And so I think part of the solution space here that we're talking about, and there's some really good stuff in the comments, what's the solution? It's like, well, maybe our incentive structure is broken, right? As Nick was saying, chasing lapel pins, chasing titles, chasing this. Like, what if we had a different incentive structure? Joe?
I wouldn't even call it an incentive structure, right? Because an incentive structure dictates that if I do this, I will get this thing, right? It's, if I do this stuff and enough people notice me, then I will get this thing, right? And then, the champagne falls from the ceiling, and, I get magic and I get a gold collar, and, then I can be a grumpy dude at the top, in 30, 40 years. So it's not a, if this happens, then this happens. So, I mean, it's basically like a reward system, right? Like, but again, what's the end goal there? Are we going all the way back to what Darren was saying?
Well,
are we working towards the bureaucracy, or are we working towards masonry? Right?
So let me add to that and say incentives do not always have to be recognition or titles, that recognition or that incentives can also be, and Daniel Pink, in his book Drive, it's a leadership book, shocker, talks about, you know, what motivates people, and he boils it down to three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That's what gets people to edit Wikipedia articles for free, right? That gets people. That's what gets people to contribute to the Linux code base for free, because they have the autonomy, the flexibility to do the things they want. They want to do it because it's challenging, just challenging enough that they want to get some mastery of it. They might not get a gold card, but at least they can say they're working on it. And purpose, believing in why they're here and what their motivating factor, what's their inspirational factor of meeting. So, like, I think if we made that autonomy, mastery, and purpose, those three things, incentivized over all the other cool things about Masonry, barbecues and Hillman Awards and supporting our youth groups, still need those. If we could just prioritize the autonomy, mastery, and purpose of our membership, I think the rest will follow, and we'll actually have some leadership instead of managers. That's my hypothesis.
Well, and if you're able to coalesce the membership around a shared vision, right? Getting back to that value proposition for Masonry, which I'd argue we have as an organization just don't have a grasp of right now. And there was a comment maybe about 30 or so minutes ago talking about, well, this seems like you all want to put forth a vision for Masonry and a value proposition for Masonry. Yes, because being able to figure out why we're here and why we make sense and why we do what we do enables us to then attract the right people, as opposed to just opening our nets wide and just trying to get more and more and more people, because we still live in the fantasy land that, Masonry is this great thing that everybody wants to be a part of. So it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I think one other option we could do is probably just take that Templar treasure that we know we all have, right?
Yeah.
And turn that into stock options. Seriously, stock options. If you
somebody cut him off. Cut him off.
Verizon stock.
Oh, we've lost Nick. I don't know what happened.
What happened?
We need to. Gosh, the timing on that was impeccable.
Oh man, yeah.
Put him back on so I can have my chicken nuggets.
Stock options.
Oh,
plastics. That joke is so old.
Well, I wanted to point out, Alex has a great question in the chat. Yeah, do you think recognition titles would be bad if they were not so easily obtainable? If we learn to grow a pair and tell brothers no or try again, I absolutely agree with that. I don't think that if we had standards and held to our standards, and I'm going to catch flack for this, Freemasonry has standards. No, we don't. And I think that goes back to Nick's point of, the West Gate. And now we have a situation, Nick was talking about guarding the East Gate as well, but we've let guys in through the West Gate that shouldn't be in the first place, and they are in leadership positions, and that compounds the issue.
Well, and so I'll take a little bit of a different approach on that, Darren, because like a lot of what we're trying to work toward in Freemasonry is, altruism, getting ourselves better, bettering our fellow Mason and the world around us. I am not advocating for the, abolishment of all titles, but you run the risk when you make titles, very, very specific. You run the risk of it, exacerbating the ego show. Right. And I don't have a good, a solution for that.
So let me throw this out, just since we're talking about a vision for Freemasonry, what our vision is. I think my vision is reality, where you're going to see Grand Lodges absorb each other. You're going to see Grand Lodges that are stronger in numbers absorb those that are around them that are not as strong in numbers. And so to the point of leadership and titles and all that, again, I think we need to start thinking about adopting somewhat of a lean philosophy when it comes to Freemasonry, and that we need to limit, or we need to rework the bureaucracy to be more effective, because we're going to have less men to fill those bureaucratic positions than we have now. And we can't continue our same business model and expect it to be even something that we can operate 5 years from now.
Oh yeah, agreed.
So to the point of titles, leadership, I think some of this is unfortunately going to work itself out, because I think we're going to see where we're going to see Grand Lodges just continue to kick the can and not do what needs to be done in terms of refining the structure, the superstructure, if you will, of their Grand Lodges, and streamlining those. So there's going to come a point where the numbers are going to streamline for us.
Yeah, I think just to add to that before you jump in, Joe, is like, what made me think of that is like, what is the operating system of Masonry, right? And it was designed, the operating system was designed for when we had our peak membership, right? It was designed for large charities. It was designed for many people with many titles and many officer positions and many regional representatives. Like, that structure, that operating system of Masonry was there for a good reason at the time. And with the lower membership,
it was the only game in town.
Yeah, and it served its purpose.
Right.
And while it's still standing today, we know that change has to happen. And if you're not deliberately designing the next operating system, right, or you're going from like Windows 3.1, you got to design for Windows 11, because it's going to happen whether you're ready or not. And here we are, Joe.
Well,
Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting. Is I challenge everyone to take a look at their Grand Lodge's code at the beginning, right, and then take a look at it during its height. It's a fascinating look, because you will see the difference in how things are viewed, and perhaps even give us strategies in which to think of the future. I think that's really what it's at. I mean, if the Constitution of Minnesota, I believe, was 6 pages when we started. It was nothing.
60?
6.
60?
400. He said 400.
This many. And see, I can count. I've been working on this. It's been
count this.
Well, hey, the fourth grade was the best 3 years of my life. But it's one of those that it was so much simpler then. And I know that there's a time and place where things have changed, right? I mean, if you look at the Oddfellows, again, I'll take them as an example. They suffered because the system in which benefits were paid out were absorbed by the government, right? For a lot of things. And, so a lot of their structure was built around that. And there's a really good podcast called the Three Links Cast that they actually discuss that because they didn't shift, the death of the actual organization, or the dying, I guess, because it's still alive, was not because of their inability to have membership. It was their inability to change the structure that they had. And that's all they had to do. But because the older members were getting a certain benefit that they still wanted to have, that structure disappeared and the younger members didn't have anything to have an advantage for and just left. And so essentially, we're seeing that with Masonry. You know, I mean, it's again, we haven't streamlined our processes. We actually make them more complicated. Some codes in this country are, I think,
Oh
I
yeah.
think I saw one that's like 600 pages. You know, it's
the one that just had a big tumultuous annual communication. I think is 900 pages long.
and that's ridiculous. I
Yeah.
mean, seriously, this isn't the United States of America's code. I mean, this is like
Yeah.
an organization that literally, if you get kicked out, you're still alive. There's no Masonic death penalty. You know, it's it's like this is hilarious. I don't understand.
You
You
know,
know,
What?
and
You mean I
simplify.
can leave? What?
You-
I
Get
can go?
you ruined it for
People do.
Darren.
And people do and live happy lives.
Yeah.
So here's another solution that comes to mind. Gonna change gears for a second.
Damn it.
Is accountability.
Mm.
Right? So to have
Yeah.
leadership, you need to be in the right authority. You need to to inspire rather than manage. But that also comes with, what do they say? With great power comes great
Right,
responsibility.
responsibility.
And accountability is part of that, right? So what does that look like from a solution perspective? You know, you can just go on Hodap's blog and you can see all sorts of Masonic trials that are going on, or past grand this, then past grand that. That's having all sorts of issues.
Not
And-
just Masonic trials. I
Right.
mean, full on
Legal.
Lawsuits,
criminal and
legal
civil
lawsuits. Yeah.
Right.
lawsuits affecting multiple grand jurisdictions.
Yeah. And barring like extreme circumstances, those things that are still kind of on the fringe, some of these guys come right back in. Right. And we're not holding ourselves as a fraternity accountable for some things. And we all have stories that we're not going to air on the air, but we know of things that have happened that are horrible things that Masons should never do. And not only does that get swept under the rug, but a lot of these guys get to remain as Masons and remain as active Masons.
So I'll name names. I'll address the situation here in Illinois.
No, no need.
All right, fine.
You can tell us about it without.
That's why
the names.
RJ's not here tonight.
Yeah, RJ's not here. That's why so I can spill the tea. I'm not going to name names, but there's a situation where we have a member who has been reported by news networks as being a Proud Boy. And there's been no comment from Grand Lodge. There's been no action taken by Grand Lodge. And, you know, if anything, we pretty much know that their philosophy is completely opposite of what Masonic philosophy is.
Right. Yeah, those two things should not be running in parallel. There needs to be a choice made there.
But there's, I think, a fear in leadership. I'm speaking on not my Grand Lodge, but on a grander scale. I think there's a fear in leadership again to rock that boat, or, you know, upend the status quo, because, well, if he's a member of this group, who are they going to come after next?
Well, and that's honest. Oh, sorry.
I was at a grand communication number of years ago, and there were two brethren who were brought up who had been convicted of crimes against children, and the committee in charge of figuring out what to do with that decided in both of those cases not to expel those brethren. That's wrong.
Right? That is wrong.
Where's the accountability? Exactly.
Need those dues, man. Need those dues. And French fries. The dues. Dues.
I like how Joe will not eat chicken nuggets in front of us, but will eat fries in front of us.
French fries are a portable food.
French fries are more sensuous than chicken
Yeah.
nuggets.
Yeah, I think so as well.
I'm going to go back to when John
Eat
cut me
those
off.
fries.
And I'm going to eat those fries, buddy. Don't you worry about it. I love you. But all kidding aside, I mean, going back to it's, and I see people posting in the comments, like, can you have it both ways? How do you do this? And how do you do that? We get back to what Darren was kind of talking about and going around it a little bit. With the current system that we have is not the system we will have in the future. And we need to be okay with that. I think, and I'm not talking about age groups, our generation of Mason, the Mason that has been around for this period of time, we're kind of sort of around the same age. We're accepting of that. But those that came in at a time of plenty, you know, during the golden age of fraternalism, and when every single soldier on earth, soldier and airman and sailor joined Freemasonry because they wanted the camaraderie, right? And, you know, going back to Jason's comment of we were the only game in town. That's not true. During the golden age of fraternalism, there were 90 freaking bodies, you know, and you had something to do every night of the week. We were just the one that survived, you know, but now we're dealing with that weight and that pressure of that.
Started off being the only one.
Yeah. But, I mean, we're dealing with that weight and again, it sounds like we're complaining, but we're not. That's going to work itself out. It's going to be painful. It's not going to be a smooth transition. There is no looking to the future because it's just a kick the can kind of mentality. And we're set up to be that way, right? It's I'm going to worry about crap in my year and my year only, and I'm going to put my blinders on and the next guy can deal with it. Well, come 2030, 39, that's going to stop, right? So Grand Lodges are going to be forced. Now, I don't know if Darren's right, if they're just going to start merging. That's probably going to be contentious, and you know that's going to be less lapel pins and less shiny things. So people are going to fight that out, right? So, but what I think is going to happen, maybe Grand Lodges merge, and you know that happens. But what I envision happening is a more decentralized Freemasonry in the future. You're going to have lodges that, because we do Masonry at the lodge level, right? Masonry doesn't have the Grand Lodge level. It doesn't. You pay bills and you ask for more money. That's what happens at a Grand Lodge level. You make Masons at a lodge level, and that's where you teach people how to be Masons and give them a value proposition to want to come next month. That happens at the lodge level. So maybe if we start strengthening our lodges, we'll have more strong lodges to not bolster the Grand Lodge, but to just do more Freemasonry. And I'm okay with that. I am so okay with that. I'm going to go back to French fries.
I agree completely. But, you know, unfortunately now part of the structure is that you have a lodge that is in place, but it's in a Masonic district, who has an officer overseeing that district, who has a part of an area that oversees, that has a manager, that leader, etc., that oversees that area, and then that area reports to the Grand Master, and we have this just this bureaucratic structure that, again, I think needs, to your point, be decentralized and be more focused on the individual lodges themselves and not have so much. I mean, why should we have middle management between a lodge and the Grand Lodge?
Yeah, I mean, you can send an email just as fast now, right? So that's a good point.
What would you say you do here? I mean, you know,
See,
maybe that's the question we should
I
ask.
take the budget numbers and the membership numbers from the Worshipful Master, and I give them to the Committee on Membership.
Oh, man,
Well, not me. My secretary does that, but
I never thought the Bobs would actually have the best advice for Freemasonry. You know?
I love it.
I think I actually wrote an article about the Bobs for the Midnight Freemasons. I'll have to dig that out, but I think it was entitled "What do you say you do here?"
That's awesome. I love that. Well, honestly, that's exactly it.
It's
because
true.
just exactly as you described, you know, I've done both leadership roles in appendant bodies and in invitational bodies, and then I've done the lodge level work, right? And I can tell you, it's much more enjoyable in those invitational bodies because you have a clear objective, you know who's in charge, and you know they're not going to bother you because literally you're one in the state, and they're not going to visit your state very often. And as long as you're following the rules, they don't care,
There it
right?
is.
You know, there we go. I love that.
So that's getting around to that autonomy
Yeah.
piece. right?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Because I had 6 different bosses. I kid you not. In that,
6?
because 6, Bob, 6. Because I had to deal with the guys who were the monitors, who would be there to look at your ritual work. I had another guy who would be the, you'd have the grand secretary who'd bother
Oh,
the
man.
secretary, who'd talk to the secretary to talk to me.
And
You'd
that
have
just makes
the
me
area.
practice masonry just enough to not get
Oh,
expelled.
boy.
Oh my gosh,
You could literally rewrite the whole movie
Just,
from masonry.
just enough not to get NPD'd.
Yeah.
Oh man. Someone
Ah.
feed that through ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
Oh my god. Well, and that's just it. I mean, I loved doing the leadership stuff for invitational bodies because I knew exactly what the expectation was. I didn't have anybody sitting over my shoulder every freaking second, right? And so that's why I worry sometimes when I see certain invitational bodies start to add that level of bureaucracy. It's like, "Duh-duh-duh-duh-duh-duh. Do you not understand? You are wonderful without it because you don't have it. So
Mhm.
don't add it. Let's
Uh,
less leadership in the middle, right?
I'll
Yeah,
get
I
you
want to
another
point
copy
out
of that in a minute.
Oscar's point about decentralization not being as simple as being stated. The business of a grand body is different from the local level, however, despite the misplaced bureaucracy. I agree completely, but I also think that we should be looking at the structure of the grand level and looking to see again where we can make improvements or make it more lean. And yeah, it's going to be painful for some people. They're going to be out of a job. They're not going to have a fancy title anymore. Or
Yeah.
But end of the day, you know, I guess the question I have to ask is why are you a Freemason? Are you a Freemason because of the titles, or are you a Freemason because you believe in what Freemasonry is as a philosophy?
The titles. I'm here for the titles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Joe
that's the
notwithstanding.
problem.
Boom. I'm there.
I like to always know that I'm in the past. That's why I carry that title. Always in the past.
No, I mean, Oscar, on fire tonight. Loving you, brother Oscar. And we just saw him
In a
last
good way. In a good way.
Yes, you're on fire in a good way. No, I mean his point is very accurate. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, and it sounds like I'm whining again, the bureaucracy that Freemasonry has is so different than the type of bureaucracy that kind of got lean on its own, in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, right? Like in the business world. It's so different, right? Because it's so steeped in tradition, to Darren's point. Change is so impossible there because, again, you've got this thing that you have to prop up no matter how few members you have and how little dues you're bringing in. It just has to keep happening, right? So you're contending with that versus how do I keep the lights on? It's such a weird dichotomy that I don't have the answer for it. But it's just, I always think about that when people complain about the bureaucracy of things, and in Freemasonry in general, it's just so overburdened by the tradition of wanting to keep it going no matter what.
We've always done it that way. And and the thing is too is like I could tell you again, I'll use Odd Fellowship because it's been a fascinating experience to see the differences between the two, because they are almost identical as an organization, right? In structure and everything. But it's interesting is when they got to a certain level of membership numbers, we have in Minnesota, I don't think we have any district deputy grandmasters in Minnesota. Literally, the Grand Lodge officers are expected to show up and help the lodges whenever they can. So literally the activity level from the Grand Lodge is a model of service because they understand the precipice they are standing upon, something that Masonry again is lacking because they are not looking for it,
Yeah, I'm also an odd fellow, Nick, and I'm actually a member of the lodge that Ainsley from Three Links Podcast
Fantastic.
is. I'm not an active member or as active as I should be. Maybe after this episode, this will change, but
You're focusing on what you value. It's okay.
Right. But in any case, I would say, yeah, I agree that their Grand Lodge is much more open to ideas because, quite frankly, they're at that point where they need to be open to ideas. And so I guess what I'm trying to harp on here is that when we're talking about leadership, what I'm asking for is a vision of leadership where we have leadership that is transparent and open to ideas and open to, trying different things, and instead of the, to your point, we've always done it this way mentality. We absolutely now are standing before the precipice that you're talking about, Nick, and I quite frankly see that to your point, Oddfellows allowing women to join their lodges in the early 2000s, but they always had a women lodge structure, better I would say than Freemasonry. We had OES, they had the Rebeccas, which now essentially a man can be a Rebecca and a woman can be an Oddfellow, and it's a beautiful thing. And the one thing that impresses me the most about my Oddfellow Lodge in Little Tuscola, Illinois, is that there is just that idea of servant leadership, and there are no egos whatsoever, because they just are about doing the work that they want to do.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. I love servant leadership, up, down, left, and right, because it is much different than the command and control military type of leadership that, again, is a little outdated for the kinder, gentler organizational leadership that we have today.
Well,
And like
it's
really
not
the
that
summary,
hierarchical.
right? Yeah, it's
structure.
I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, and I come last.
It's bringing everybody up so that they surpass you.
Right, the rising tide, right, lifts all boats. Right,
Mhm.
so it's whatever little catchphrase you want to say. Like, it's all about making others more awesome, so that we are all awesome together, and we will all grow. And that's a completely different structure. I mean, it's just, again, we could talk purely about servant leadership for a whole other episode. But I mean, that's the
like we
punchline,
have.
right?
I think we have.
But that's the punchline. That's what we need as a solution going forward.
Speaking
We don't
of
need
servant leadership,
that's
what is this?
servant leader, brother Oscar,
Brother Oscar.
Right.
from the chat to the screen.
To reality. That's amazing.
I love it.
And the sad part of this, I am not wearing a bow tie, so it's probably going to crash.
We can't tell if you keep it
Yeah,
above
just
the
keep it
chin.
right there. We don't know.
Well, that guy's wearing a bow tie. So
Nice.
greetings.
So
greetings.
you've been fantastic, sharing your opinion. What else do you want to add? Because you've been there, you've done that, you've been in Grand Lodge leadership positions.
I've been in
tell
Grand
me.
Lodge. I've been accused of a lot of things as well. Of
That's a good thing.
It's it's really I posted. I'm not sure if it got in before I joined. Just on the vein around the concept of Grand Lodge, and I it's a lot of text, but I really found it to be one of the most beautiful ways to explain the symbiosis between what should happen at a lodge level and what should happen at the Grand Lodge level. And I use the term symbiosis for a reason, right? Because we've constantly been in this introduction of it's us versus them, or them versus us, or I mean, I can tell you the horror stories of people saying, "Oh, yeah, we're all being on level, but you're not on my level." Like, did you actually just say that? So the irony is that when we reform and look at what the true nature of this thing that we're supposed to be in, and I'll get to leadership in a second, the true nature of what we're supposed to have, it's a symbiosis. One is connected to the other, and not necessarily that you have one or the other, right? And I think it's helpful when we start to think about that fundamentally, because I can tell you that there are guys who are masters of lodges that have no idea that they are Grand Lodge. Like,
Right.
they are Grand Lodge. And we've seen examples of when the delegates realize that they form the Grand Lodge, and in essence, when Grand Lodge is in session, that they comprise that legislative governing body. They can change their rules if they want to. They can enact rules. It's not one guy in charge of everything. And I think going back to this concept or the structures on leadership, I'll be honest, I have moved from the concept of servant leadership to focusing on the concept of transformational leadership. And the reason why I say that is oftentimes they say servant leaders are the ones that, of course, they help try to solve problems. Transformational leaders try to help others be the problem solvers, right? You don't look at your legacy based on what you've done, but how you've helped others to be able to surpass what you have done and give them that opportunity to lift the collective boat and the collective ceiling, whatever analogy that you want to deal with. And at the same time, understand how to deal with tremendous challenges, right? Not everything is sweet in Freemasonry, as we've seen. And there are people who are not built for times of challenges, if you understand what I'm saying.
Sure.
And treat things in a quote unquote Masonic way, meaning, well, this is how we form it from the Masonic Lodge concept, and not from the perspective of, not say business from a lens of transaction, but business in the sense of, as you all have talked about, if there are resources there that you can do this, if there are skills, if there are certain operating procedures that you know how to conduct a meeting, how to, or publicly discuss and internally, develop. These are things that are not germane to Freemasonry, but they're
Dare we say organizational transformation?
Totally.
Well, here's the rub, and I'm so glad that you joined, Brother Oscar.
I'll shut up now. Sorry.
No. I'm about to hit you with a question. So, and I wanted your honest answer on this. So, and you've been in Grand Lodge leadership, and I would say you're a reasonably well-traveled individual. Just a little bit. The problem that I have with some of the answers is Freemasonry is still, especially in this country, right? If we leave continental Freemasonry, it's a whole different boat, right? The UK is different, Europe is different. They're doing their own thing and they're happy, right? We have the big problem here in continental Freemasonry where jurisdictionally it's so different that a lot of the leadership things that you're talking about absolutely don't work in other jurisdictions. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like we saw what happened in Texas, right? Like the constituency, the Grand Lodge, the people in the Grand Lodge made a decision and their laws allowed them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There are some jurisdictions where you can't do that, right? It's very oligarchical. It's very top heavy. And the little guy, the John, doesn't have a say, right? So, like how do we take that concept of leadership and apply it across the board where it works for everybody, knowing that some jurisdictions aren't really set up to allow the masses to rise up and drive the organization forward?
So forgive me for saying it this way, because you're going to give a very, very, you're going to give a reaction. I go back to education. And when I say education and what it means to be a member of the lodge, what it means to be a voting delegate, what it means, what your powers, what your rules and regulations, and it's not sexy for people, right? No one wants to join Freemasonry to go read a book of constitutions that's this big, but at the same token, if in any,
Nick probably did.
let me rephrase, most people don't, but in any given group, order, whatever you name it, you want to be a real car, or I should say a model car developer. You're gonna figure out the rules of that. You're not just gonna fly by the seat of the pants. You're gonna find out what are the parameters that exist and immerse yourself in them so that you can be best informed. And I say it in a way because the vernacular of when I asked the question earlier about, do the masses actually prefer the status quo? There's some who would say people want to remain, pardon the expression, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen and not have to worry about any of this existential, exoteric, or the other piece, right? And the problem with that is it's easy to say, let's just stick our heads in the sand and not be aware of it. Or, yeah, it's going to take a lot of time to learn this information, or how do I, I'm powerless. No one is really powerless, as we've seen, right?
Yeah, even recently.
And even, but it's not something that has just happened, right? The way our country formed was not by people sitting by the wayside, right? The systems of revolution, and I say this very politely because it's not necessarily revolution, but an evolution that we really are focused on. But the systems of all of the stories we've seen, even our early forefathers, even throughout Freemasonry, those who have been movers and shakers, pardon the expression, have been in the younger demographic consistently. Not as a negative connotation of a generational divide, but it's illustrative of, we have seen historically in our organization these ebbs and flows, these thought leadership, and these action-oriented devices that allow us to shape and move in a way that's hopefully forward-leaning, forward-thinking. And nothing to do with politics, just the simple action and reaction. So I say education for several reasons, because you have to know what you're getting into to know where it is you're trying to reach, where it is you're trying to go, what is it you're trying to accomplish, what are the mission, the aims of the fraternity, where are the mission. I'm sorry. Yep.
I like how you said that, because that's one thing that I try to do as a change agent in the organizations that I do for my vocation, is I take the approach of, like, know your enemy better than yourself. Like, you should know all the rules. You should know your Grand Lodge's, laws. You should know how things get done, so that when you want to make the change, you know what's legal, what's allowed, how to navigate, and how to not break the rules, but how to bend the rules, right? How to make change happen. Because if you can't just go in blind, to your point, you gotta do your homework and make sure that you don't get lost in the bureaucracy. Don't get lost in becoming one of those who's just stuck in the old way of managing that bureaucracy, right? You want to know it so that you can bend it to your will. It's like the whole Matrix thing, right? Like, you gotta be able to bend the code to your rules.
Yeah.
There's
John, tell me you've read The Far without telling me you've read The Far.
But you remind me, taking it outside of Freemasonry, even my collegiate fraternity, I remember the founders of my collegiate fraternity telling me that they were so adamant of having a right to be on campus and to do the things that they were doing. They walked into their first Panahel meeting, and they had never studied or had no idea about the rules, the Robert Rules of Order. So they got shut down every time they opened their mouth because they didn't know the process. Right. Same thing. You want to do something in government, right? You got to know the process for how to submit a bill, how to enact change, how to develop policy, how to write a constitutional change. These are things that we have to make ourselves aware of, because we can't just, pardon the expression, we can't just rage against the machine if we don't know how to fix the machine or how to maneuver the elements that are necessary to get us in the direction we want to go.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Go ahead, Darren.
I was going to say, Oscar's absolutely right, and I think, if the first thing that people are asking, what's our vision, or what advice could we give, would be to be familiar with your Constitution bylaws, read it backwards and forwards, and know the rules of your Grand Lodge, and then, if you want to make change isn't going to happen immediately. You can't just throw together legislation and expect it to pass. There's a lot of politicking that would need to happen. You have to get allies on your side, others that believe in your vision, and you take that vision and you grow it, and then you get a groundswell of movement behind it. And then with that groundswell, when you finally introduce it as legislature, you may have an opportunity to get it to pass. But it's not something that you can just say, oh, I want to make change, I'm going to submit legislation, and this is going to be it. No, there's a lot of organization, there's a lot of things that would need to happen for that to happen. But I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to require work.
And some people don't have time for that. right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's not
Absolutely.
why I came here.
Sure.
I
Right.
came here to enjoy the fellowship. I came here to be wrong. I didn't come here for that. And that's the existential crisis that we have to navigate, because not everyone's going to fit into that same box. So how do you collectively deal with the needs of the all, while at the same time preserving that individual goal, that aim, that excitement, that electricity that connects the individual to the organization, which is what we have as a Masonic entity. So
Well, I'm going to sound like a so although I am a lawyer, I don't actually practice, so I don't ruin anybody's lives except in the fraternity. And I
Oh,
can
thank
tell you,
goodness.
I know, I
Oh
can tell you,
gosh.
it's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing that I do, which is I do know the code far too well, right? And I've used it on several occasions as kind of a smackdown. And it's a terrible thing to do because I think sometimes, especially with our leaders, our rules are so dense and so complicated. And I can tell you the Minnesota code is actually one of the shorter ones. And even then I would say sometimes it's trying to legislate so many things that could be handled outside of itself because it's not a function that needs to be done. And that of course is something that needs to be changed institutionally, right? That's something else. But I think in so many ways, a lodge is both a structure that has to be structured, right? I mean, we literally in our ritual discuss it as a very structured place.
Mhm,
But at the same time, I think there's a certain level of flexibility that has
mhm,
to occur,
mhm,
and a lot of leaders, just like you're saying, Oscar, don't have time. I mean, they don't have time, or more accurately, inclination, right,
mhm.
to
Yeah.
learn these rules. And I think sometimes maybe not a leadership training, and maybe not us versus them, because I could tell you I've been on the side of fighting, raging against the machine. I have done it, and I enjoy it sometimes because that's why you
And
go
now
to
you're
law
the
school, is
machine.
to be a butthead, right? I mean, that's the point of the place, right? I mean, they teach you that. But it I think sometimes we do need to help the leaders understand that they are, just to your point, the Grand Lodge, right? In Minnesota, the Grand Lodge is certain Grand Lodge officers and the masters and wardens of the lodges. And I think that does not get impressed upon people until their installation as master, that there are rules that need to be abided by and read, but sometimes it's because they're looking at it and going, this is a very dense document that is not being explained, and I don't even want to be on my condo uh, board. So why am I doing this, right? So it's
Well,
yeah.
but at the same time, like we are in a position in this organization where we saw this exact same thing play out with Texas, last month. Um, the constituency and the membership knew the code backwards and forwards, and they were able to check some of the things that were happening and enact change, but do it in a way that was constitutionally sound. And that's how you have to enact change in an
Right.
organization structure
Yep.
like this.
Absolutely.
And to your point, right? It's different everywhere. Um, I laugh because if any of you have ever been able to visit a Grand Session, Grand Lodge in New York, you will see how. And I've had brothers from Pennsylvania come over. It's like, we would never do that. It's like, well, we're New York, right? We respect, but we let you know how it feels. And we've had scenarios where things get challenged. That just because someone said this, that doesn't mean that that's the case. And at the end of it, the brothers are the ones who decide at the end of the day, and that's what they're rolling with. And to the point around even the perspectives on leadership, and earlier on when I joined on the tax piece on the chat function, I talked about the definition of leadership, because that's very important to understand, and it means different things to different people. How many of you have been worshipful masters, then all of a sudden you're not just responsible for the opening and closing, the ritual delivery, the trust board, but you are now responsible for answering to personal issues from the membership, right? You become a social worker, you become a mental health practitioner, you become
A tax attorney.
You find out your lodge owns the cemetery.
you're thrown in such a, in most, if not all the times, you're not prepared for all of that because that's not what you signed up for. That's not your vocation. That's not what you have the biggest adhesion to. But these are the elements that we unfortunately place on that person, and I would say incorrectly, right? Totally incorrectly. And we see it being amplified the further along. I mean, I'll tell you that when I got into the Grand Lodge, I was like, okay, I'm still Brother Oscar. Yes, I got elected to this position, but I don't have to wear these and those of you who have seen these cuffs and apron everywhere. Like, not everyone wears cuffs, but it's like, no, Oscar, you got elected to the position. You have to, they elect you. You must wear this. And I'm like, yeah, but not every day, right? Like, I don't.
Are they going to fire me if I don't?
But
right.
But it's part of the respect. It's part, it's fed. What I had most problematic is how people looked at you. I ceased being Brother Oscar's. Oh, right worshipful, right worshipful, right worshipful. It's like, hey guys, I'm still Brother Oscar. When I'm in the lodge room, same thing when you're worshipful master. When I'm in the lodge room, yes, I'm worshipful master. But outside of that, yes, I get the respect, the camaraderie, but we sometimes amplify things a little bit more than they should. And it feeds into that subconscious ego that unfortunately poisons our human nature.
Well, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
That's it, right? You just that's what we should have named the show, right? Ego-driven leadership, which has been kind of the model that we've been taught, right? Like, I came into Masonry at a certain time. You all did in your own times, right? But what did you see when you first got in? It's like, oh, the guy with the cuffs. He's the guy we gotta,
past masters were like, oh wow,
yeah, oh my god, don't talk to them if they're grumpy looking, or if they're not napping, but yeah, no, we're kind of taught this ego-based respect system, which is really dichotomous with the whole we're on the level thing, right?
There's so many of them.
Yeah, it's just, I find it so striking that, and again, Oscar, to your point, you're 100% right, and I hate disagreeing with you. I mean, I just look at.
Please, you have to. I'm
going to. Don't worry about it. No, but I mean, it's going back to it's so jurisdictional thing. Like, I pay a lot of dues, and my wife isn't asleep by now, so she doesn't know how many dues I pay. I pay a lot. I'm a member of many jurisdictions, but in that, joining many different jurisdictions, you saw the different ways that they do business, right? And for me, I think of, and I'm not going to name the jurisdiction, but I look at a jurisdiction that I'm involved with that is the complete opposite of how Texas operates, right? Where every single past master or person who held a position has a vote. They have a damn Scoretron, in the middle of the thing that's counting numbers, and people are electronically voting. And, you see numbers pop up and you can tell, holy crap. Versus it's converse, where you have a bunch of dudes. Not everybody who you think gets a vote would get a vote, and they hold up these little paper cards, and it's kind of wishy-washy how the numbers roll out, right? You see a bunch of red cards pop up for no, and then you got a guy up top saying, oh yeah, that passed, and everybody's turning their head like, what the hell just happened? Like, they're so different, these systems. My question is, how do we fix all of it across the board, right? Instead of one jurisdiction at a time, right?
Revolution or evolution, right?
So my challenge, evolution, not revolution. And the question becomes, is the task or the aim to do everything at once?
That's fair. Yeah.
Right? What are, and I'm not saying what are the winnable battles or what's the lower hanging fruit. I'm not using any of those terms. Just specifically, what is accomplishable
by 2040?
By 2040.
Well, and how can we increase interjurisdictional transference of best practices and lessons learned? Because we don't have to figure out everything ourselves.
Correct.
But Jason, my Masonry has been around since time immemorial. And what that means is you can't change anything.
My Grand Lodge is older than your
time and whose memorial.
Yeah.
So let me ask, I'm sorry, John.
Go ahead, jump in there.
And then quick question. Quick question for Oscar. Just how do we break through the groupthink that Grand Lines seem to have? I mean, in many jurisdictions and many appendant bodies, I feel that you have a leadership that has a group think. There's zero transparency and often zero vision. So how does the average member, if personally it keeps me up at night, and I guess I'm the abnormal member, but how can we really affect change?
Mm-hmm. You're not going to like my answer.
We can't.
Okay.
Let me come off mute.
So the reason I say you're not going to like my answer, it sounds cliche, but it's literally the only way you can operationalize it, right? You have to be the change. And when I say be the change, not only you as an individual, what I tell brothers, brothers that I've come across and like, I can never make it into Grand Lodge, or I hear it's expensive, I hear it's this and that, and little know there's budgets, all this other stuff. People get deterred from thinking that they can be able to be impactful or they can be the change. The goal is to be to have perseverance. And the perseverance is also going to need, I'll say it this way, you need a pool. So in order to fight groupthink, and in order to impart change, you need more individuals who are in that eligible category to be pulled from that pool. And those eligible individuals need to come from all walks of life, all areas, because essentially you have to grow that thought process so that everyone gets it. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You desensitize people to analysis of alternatives in differing points of view.
And by expanding that pool, by training, going back to transformational leadership, by training as many as possible to know, not telling them how you should think, but to know how they can improve, how they can set a vision. Now, whenever I talk to brothers in the lodge or I do an installation in the lodge, I always make this joke, and it's not even a joke, it's serious. I say to the worship master, you are now responsible as far as having the custodial relationship for this lodge. Now, the irony, the same language that we use is the first kind of appointed position within the lodge, where that first brother is the custodian of trying to accomplish things within the lodge. So soup to nuts. You started at the end and you're beginning at the beginning, right? So the irony in all of that is if we get people the opportunity to understand that they too can be part, they too can elevate their mindset, they too can be the change, that then improves the quality that we begin to see being eligible and able to participate actively in your Grand Lodge and in your district and in your lodges.
Love it.
So that's why you're not going to like my answer.
Yeah.
Well, I think
because it's work.
I think it's idealistic because I think that, part of the bureaucracy that is in place is to continue to stack the deck with guys that are the same mentality as the leaders that are in place.
Not impossible, but hard.
But here's where I would differ in saying it is idealistic. It is not. I'm a pragmatic optimist. Probably is a better way of saying it, right? Nick likes that one. But when I say pragmatic optimist, in the sense of, I'll use myself as an example. For years, I was looking around, seeing, the history and the pantheon of my Grand Lodge, and I said, well, why is such and such? Why don't we see? Why blah blah blah? And guys like, oh, we don't have people eligible. There are guys there, but they're not eligible. I'm like, but there's guys here and this and like, So I took it on myself to say, I want to see the change, so I need to be the change. So I ran. Gotcha. When I ran, the stories I can tell you of what was said about me, what was said to me, what was put in the obstacles put in the way would have deterred the simplest individual. But I had to persevere.
Mm-hmm.
I was told some horrendous things. I was asked horrendous things. Things were said about me that were horrendous by brothers. But I wasn't doing it for Oscar. My process of thinking was, if they can stop me, they can stop anyone.
Yeah.
So it is
That's
my
true.
duty to make sure I am doing this not for myself, but for those who come behind me. Going back to the point, the
That makes
pragmatic
sense.
optimist.
Well, because that's future oriented. Yeah,
It's
and that's
future
really
oriented.
that's really about changing the failure of Masonic leadership.
And if others
Thank you
see
for
that they're able to do it as well,
Mhm.
they are going to be less deterred, and they'll become more enthusiastic. So be the
Exactly.
sacrificial lamb.
Mhm.
So that's why I say it's not ideal. Technically, it's not idealistic for the person to be the sacrificial lamb. But
Right.
if some of you go back to this TED talk that I always use in my work conversations, it's an old TED talk about, and once again, I recognize the term revolution versus evolution, but it always says the guy who starts the movement is not the first guy, it's the second guy who follows him.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep.
And that's a powerful thing,
It is.
because you're basically sacrificing that first guy, but the second guy that follows is the one that people recognize and say, yes, we're going to make this movement happen.
I love it. So that's a great place to do our wrap ups for tonight. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with all the guest hosts and basically ask for one solution, right? So we've talked about a whole spectrum of characteristics, qualities, improvements. And so end with one, and brevity is
Maribel,
key.
put it in the chat.
Yeah, there you go, Maribel. Hop in there too. Let's start with Nick Johnson.
Well, I think I'm going to jump on again my one thought. I think it's exactly correct that the egoism can really eat away at how Masonry functions. It's that whole Thoreau, men lead lives of quiet desperation, and really I do sometimes think that we need to be a little bit more picky with the leaders that we actually are putting in. I do think that there's a danger when we just continue to move people forward without any kind of thought, or without them actually feeling like they have all the tools they need. So that's really I really do think that we have a lot of guys in Freemasonry that are wonderful, that would be wonderful leaders. But I think ultimately we just have to be picky on the ones we don't want, and then hopefully the ones we do want will actually remain and rise to the top. So again, and I give my plugs for the blog that one of these days, I've said this now for too many years, that I will put up a post. I don't know what it's going to be. It might be 3 words that say, "Here is post." I won't even put but at millennialfreemason.com. And I want to thank all of you for letting me on. Fantastic 10 years. You guys are really doing awesome. So I just want to say fantastic and thank you for letting me be here.
You're a part of that legacy, man.
Nice. All right. Brother Darren.
Educate yourself. Read your Constitution bylaws. Read as much as you can read about your Grand Lodge, its history, where it comes from, and then be not afraid to ask questions or demand accountability and transparency from your current leadership.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. Congrats on 10 years. Awesome achievement, and glad to know you, gentlemen.
Likewise. See you in 10.
Even me.
Even you, Joe.
Thank you.
Brother Oscar.
All right, so here's where I will constantly confound. I'm going to use, as some of you know, I'm an epidemiologist, so I like numbers as much as the next guy. But I'm going to say my answer is in the form of a formula, which I just put into the chat, right? So my end in thought is in the form of a solution to help us solve this question of leadership. It is Y minus E plus H plus S plus C minus TM plus FC. Y minus E is you minus the ego, plus H for humility, plus S for strategy, plus C for culture, minus TM, time spent managing, plus FC, meaning followers' commitment, equals that leadership that you need to be successful.
Well, I'm going to chew on that for another 2 hours, so that's that's great. But I saw a lot of head nods from the rest of the hosts, so yes, that's an excellent summary, mathematically even, of I think really the true leadership opportunity we have ahead of us. So thank you, Brother Oscar, for coming on. Thanks you for coming on at the last minute because we love hearing everything you have to say. Let's go to Joseph.
Yeah, how the hell do I top a
I know, right?
mathematical formula? I got one. Okay, ready? Here it comes. And I'm going to share it on the screen. This is the solution to everything. Okay, to be one, ask one. No. Well, as the newest and youngest host, it was awesome seeing, the OG generation like Nick. And sorry we didn't get to see RJ and our other previous hosts. Love y'all. I started out here as a fan. So I started listening 10 years ago and listening in my car 10 years ago. So I am super, super jazzed to be a part of this. This is freaking awesome. And thank you for allowing me to use expletives as much as I have. You let me be me, and that's awesome. But so the answer is as much as I want to disagree with Oscar, I'm going to agree with him here and say, it's I think what's going to come down to is a collective shedding of egos, right? Is when we can start to put all that aside as an organization, not as individuals, right? Because that's what Freemasonry is learning how to kill your ego and be a little bit of a brighter spark in your world each and every day, right? But if we can collectively do that as an organization, we'll get to the place where we need to be. I'm not worried about Freemasonry 16 years from now. I'm really not. I think it's going to be awesome. Whatever form it takes, I'm going to be all in it. I'm going to be older. I still won't have any hair, but I'll be in it to win it. And, I'm jazzed to see the changes that are coming. But I think, again, a little bit of ego death as an organization will help pave the way to allow some of those changes to happen more organically than to, be that evolution versus that revolution that's painful and it costs blood and tears, which we don't want to see. But that's my answer. This has been an awesome show. I'm super jazzed to be a part of this. And I'm blessed to call you all my brothers and friends.
Nice. So mandatory ego death with lapel pins.
With lapel pins.
Nice. Brother Jason.
2 things. I know you said 1. I'm going to go with 2 because I can. Harkening back to something Oscar said a little while ago, don't try to change everything at once. Pick those areas that personally, professionally fuel you and drive you. Maybe that is education. Maybe that is membership statistics and retention. Maybe that is mentorship and relationship building, like our good friend Chad Kopinski. Maybe that is organizational transformation, or maybe it's being that leader that can cultivate a followership behind you. The second thing is don't stop trying for whatever you end up, choosing. You can pivot, go to other things. What might be a hot button topic for you Now may very well not be in the next 24 or 48 months, but persevere, and also scale it down to something that's achievable. And because small incremental evolutionary sustainable changes are the things that are going to change the course of the organization.
Nice. Love it. Thank you very much. And I guess for my final thoughts, accountability, I'll go back to that. And I'm going to put a little twist on it. Accountability, not just for our leaders and holding them accountable for the decisions they make or don't make, and make sure that we vote with our feet, right? We go to the things and we support the things that we believe to be right, but also accountability for yourself, and which gets to the point of being the change, right? Hold yourself accountable in what you want to see in Masonry. If we just change, what is that? So I think that's the only way that we're going to move forward, are through those baby steps of holding each other accountable to what we say we want, and not stick to the status quo just because it's the way we've always done things. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for watching. Happy 10 years, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.
Be the change. Because Oscar said so. Be the change.
10 years. Holy cow. Pew, 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 pew.